Hi.
How are you doing?
How are you?
I'm doing well. Hey, you know, sometimes I run away, other times yeah. But you know, but I came back back with you. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, could you apply for that?
Middle, maybe? Really good. Yeah. Getting a little cozier.
Yeah. Well.
They are, so they are.
Yes.
And.
Okay, so what happened is, oh, yeah. It's hard to see it. Yeah, it's not soft. And then.
Okay, let's call today's Puyallup City Council meeting for Tuesday, September 12th, 2023. It's now 6:30 p.m. and I want to thank everyone for being here this evening as we gather to do the city's and the people's business. And will you please join me as we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, City Clerk, will you please conduct the roll call?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Castema.
Present.
Councilmember King. Present. Councilmember Palmer.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Whitting.
Present.
Councilmember Dorr.
Present.
Councilmember Ferris.
Present.
Mayor Johnson.
And present. Thank you, City Clerk. Council, before us, we have, if I can get, we have an agenda before us, items 1 through, it looks like we're going all the way through to 8A. If you're so moved, I'd like maybe entertain a motion to approve the agendas before us.
Second.
All right, Council, we have an agenda, a motion and a second to approve the agendas before us today. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Thank you, Council. Motion passes. Council, before us, we have items 2A and 2B. It's the recommendation approval of August 22nd and August 29th of 2023 minutes. Unless there's any concerns with the minutes that are before us, I might entertain a motion to approve.
Move approval.
Okay, thank you. Council, we have before us a motion and a second to approve the minutes as stated before us in 2A and 2B. Those who would agree with that and signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Thank you. Okay, now we have a proclamation. And before we go to the proclamation, we will have citizens' comments following the proclamation. Over as you come in, there should be some yellow, kind of golden color slips if you'd like to speak tonight. It's not too late to go ahead and fill one out, put your name and some information on there and hand it to the city clerk, and he'll bring those over to me and we'll acknowledge your freedom of speech to be able to share. But for now, we're going to move on to a proclamation. And this proclamation talks about, something that is, somewhat uncomfortable to talk about, but nevertheless, we want to recognize those things. Whereas childhood cancer is the leading cause of death by disease in children, and whereas each year worldwide, there are more than 400,000 new childhood cancer diagnoses, and whereas although the 5-year survival rate for childhood cancers has reached 85%, nearly 1,040 American children under the age of 15 are expected to die from cancer in 2023. And whereas 2/3 that do survive will face at least one chronic health condition later on in life as a result of treatment toxicity, with 1/4 being classified as severe to life-threatening. And whereas there are hundreds of children being treated for cancer in Washington State, with locations at the Seattle Children's Hospital in Seattle, Mary Bridge Hospital in Tacoma, and the Shriners Hospitals for Children in Spokane. Whereas the cause of childhood cancer are largely unknown, and more must be done to study this disease and to raise awareness and to find a cure. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Puyallup City Council that September 12th through October 1st be recognized as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. In witness thereof, I, Mayor Dean Johnson, have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Puyallup to be affixed this 12th day of September 2023. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Council. Okay, at this time, we have some citizens' comments, and we have a few folks that have indicated they'd like to speak. So the first for speaking is Paul. If you want to come and share with us a little bit about Van Leerp looks like. Is it Paul Romanich? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson.
Yeah.
My name is Paul Romich. I live in District 1. I'm here to talk about housing and planning, but not in the usual way, as the housing is not for you or me, but for the other residents of the city who don't have a voice in these chambers, the ones we see and hear less and less every day. Currently, Van Leeuwenhoek is mostly wild grassland, which is the perfect home for bugs and birds. But lately, we've seen a decline in the large majority of insect populations. And since 1970, a 30% decrease in North American bird populations. With grassland birds hit the hardest, down by 53%. It's no coincidence that the loss of our natural neighbors is aligned with how we use land. When we developed out and out and turned from a small town to a suburb, we destroyed the grasslands first because they're flat, mostly cleared, and easy to pave over. We didn't think long-term about how these wild grasslands offer shelter, nesting areas, and to food sources such as nectar, seeds, berries, and insects that sustain diverse wildlife. Now, here's the thing. The options on the park plan survey for Van Leeuwenhoek did not allow for voicing the desire for preservation. All options were for development. Pickleball courts are great, but only for snowbirds, not sparrows or finches. The park in its undeveloped state is already an attraction thanks to the lupine bloom. And being married to a bird watcher, I know that Van Leeuwenhoek is a great place to look for birds you might not normally see in the city proper. The city should look to leverage these facts as non-development is a cost-effective use that aligns with our residents' goals for the city that were made known from the ESAP survey. Now, I know the city does not really take much stock into Facebook comments, but I had one that gains a significant amount of traction. And I'll let our public affairs officer, I don't see him over there, correct me, but 50 like and love reactions on a comment is statistically significant for our city. Anyway, I'd like to share what I wrote 4 weeks ago, so it's on the record. Multiple generations were raised with the words, "Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone," playing on the radio. The results of the Environment and Sustainability Action Plan survey were overwhelmingly clear that the community values preservation of our natural spaces. Why is this not an option on the survey? These design ideas for Van Leeuwenhoek were based on the requirements from before we upgraded the rec center. One would hope that the city would revisit the requirements and factors that we've identified in the time since. If the city does determine the same or similar requirements, investigate if these amenities can find a home in other parks throughout the city. I hope that the Parks and Rec Board, City Council, and city staff all take a step back, take stock of the current situation, and make minimal developments to leave our natural spaces natural and avoid another generation of regret. The amount of support I received on this comment aligns with the results of the ESAP survey that said 80% of the respondents are concerned about the loss of habitat. It aligns with the city's own PROS plan that says the current activity level for observing wildlife is greater than the combined activity levels for the planned development. I believe the city could be missing a prime tourism and cultural enrichment opportunity that shows that Puyallup is for all seasons. Van Leeuwenhoek Park is unique and valuable as is, and we shouldn't rush into changing it without giving it a second thought. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Next, we have up for speaking is former Mayor John Hopkins.
John Hopkins, District 1. Some observations. This is the second one in the series about commercial remodels and the permitting and some of the difficulties that people face. Now, some people get the information ahead of time and make the right decisions. For example, Caitlin did Ish. She realized upon talking to staff, etc., that she was going to be required to have a sampling tea. Well, that knocked her project out of the water right away, but didn't cost her any money, just lost an opportunity. And we have others who have got all the right information ahead of time and proceeded. Again, no harm, no foul. But a great number of people, smart people too, they'll go out and they'll buy property or rent property, and then they'll maybe do some demolition, maybe cut up the slab a little bit, buy some materials and stuff. Well, what seems to happen to a lot of them, instead of having Cajun restaurant coming January, what happens is the next thing you see their place on LoopNet. They've gone broke. This happens way too many times. And like I said, these are not stupid people. They've made a best guess. Couldn't possibly cost more than 100,000, could it? Well, then there's the others. There's those who start on it and they get to the same point, but they have one secret weapon. Honey, can I have another 100,000? And they blast through and they get their projects open. And there's approximately 3 in town that I can think of right now that are like that. And I would suggest that you talk to these people, directly, but stand back a couple of paces because they will be spitting bullets and foaming at the mouth. And what I will really want to point out is there's a couple of reasons why these things happen. And it's not development services taking too long to process the permits. They do really well on that thanks to the system that you guys implemented. They actually do it in a timely manner. That's good. It's not that. And it's not the fees either. There's nothing wrong with the fees. The chump change really in it. What it is 2 things. It's the time to prepare your permit. It's incredibly difficult to put a permit together. That's one thing. And the other one is the business of the city required permit, code upgrades. Those are the 2 big things, both of which I will talk about another time separately. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mayor Hopkins. Just a comment. I'd be interested in knowing who those properties are. So if there's an email you could maybe forward to me or any of us would like to see, know more information. Okay. At this point, there's no other folks that have filled in a request. I'll open online to see if there's any attendees that would like to speak. There's a couple of folks who are watching or listening via Zoom. If you'd like to speak, there should be a little hand icon. If you'd like to raise that, I'll certainly acknowledge the opportunity for you to speak. Okay, looks like we're clear there. So I'm going to close citizens' comments and move on to the consent agenda. Council, before us, we have just 2 items in 4A and 4B. Unless there's any concerns, I might entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as before us in 4A and 4B.
Move approval.
Okay.
Second.
All right, Council, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda 4A and 4B. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Thank you. Motion passes. Thank you. Council, before us have a couple presentations. We have a presentation 5E on the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs accreditation. I understand our police chief, Scott Engel, will give a presentation.
Morning, Mayor Johnson, Deputy Mayor Whitting, members of the council, Scott Engel, Police Chief. Tonight, I have the distinct honor and privilege to tell you about our journey to accreditation at the Puyallup Police Department. And we'll go through a few PowerPoint slides here. And then, of course, if you have questions, we can take those at the end. So what is accreditation? Let's start there. Accreditation was created by the Washington State Legislature back in 1976 to recognize agencies that exhibit best practices, that are doing things in law enforcement that are cutting edge, that are following standards, that are excellent in service to the customers that we serve in our community. WASPIC, the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs, has been the agency, if you will, for lack of a better term, that has been designated as the overseer of the accreditation process, truly from beginning to end. WASPIC has maintained an operational accreditation program ever since 1976, and you'll see in a future slide that it was last updated in 2017, and then most recently some tweaks along the way. The current accreditation program was updated again in 2017, and it's continually updated as laws and best practices change within the law enforcement industry. There is a WASPIC Professional Services Committee, an actual accreditation commission, and then the board of directors of WASPIC all have a hand in deciding if an agency is accredited. The accreditation process itself is comprised of 8 different components. An interesting contract, which is essentially an initial meeting with WASPIC staff to let them know that a law enforcement agency is interested in pursuing accreditation, file maintenance, self-assessment, on-site assessment, evaluation, accreditation commission review, the executive board review, the actual award, and then reaccreditation. And we'll talk about all of these in just a few minutes. Agencies have 1 year from contract signing with WASPIC to complete the accreditation process. Accreditation lasts for 4 years, and then an agency must go through a re-accreditation process. So we were originally accredited back in the early 1990s. And for whatever reason, later on in that decade, the department no longer pursued accreditation. We notified WASPIC actually in the fall of 2019, before the dreaded COVID arrived, that we wanted to pursue accreditation. And we began taking steps that year in the fall to move towards accreditation. In 2020, upon the arrival of COVID, it became very clear that it was going to be nearly impossible to continue to pursue accreditation in that early time of COVID, when we were moving people out of the building and doing these different things. So we notified WASPIC that we were going to end our pursuit of accreditation during the COVID outbreak. So last year, at the end of last year, we decided we were ready to go again and felt that we were in a place where we could, in earnest, work on accreditation and get to where we need to be within, again, that year time frame, which is very important. There is no grace in that year time period. You're either ready to go in a year or you're not. So in December of 2022, we again notified WASPIC that we were going to pursue accreditation and essentially asked for them to start the clock, so to speak, for Puyallup PD. Our accreditation manager this time around was our support assistant, administrative assistant, Nicole McNiven. The accreditation manager has to go through some training, understand the accreditation process, and then understand how the actual review will occur for the agency. And Nicole took that role on for us this second time around. So let's talk about the first part, which is the self-assessment phase. This is where we assess our ability to meet 145 different standards that are set forth from WASPIC, addressing major law enforcement areas. Professional Services Committee sets those, and they have major emphasis areas that they are going to look at, both through their on-site assessment and their assessment of our policies and procedures. And boy, that is really tiny. So I apologize how tiny that is on the screen. It wasn't that tiny on my screen. So they look at, does your agencies have goals and objectives? And do you actually share those with your staff and work towards those each year? We look at our role and authority. Do officers have authority based on municipal codes to take action, state law in our community? And do we, when we hire people, let officers know that? We look at use of force practices. They look at management, staffing, organization, and utilization of personnel. They look at records management, and I will tell you they look at that very closely. They look at how information technology happens in our department, and that also involved our IT department here at the city. There's many things that law enforcement does with information that has to be done in a secure fashion, and that's an area that WASPIC pays attention to through the accreditation process. Unusual occurrences. Is a police department ready to respond, act, and serve during an unusual event? That could be a natural disaster. It could be a human-caused unusual incident. Are your officers trained, prepared, and do you have your plans in place to be able to respond, react, and serve the community during an unusual occurrence? Health and safety, fiscal management, recruitment and selection. Training is also, I would put a little asterisk by that one, heavily scrutinized by the accreditation process. Performance evaluations. Are we evaluating our employees on an annual basis? And do we sit down and have meaningful conversations with our employees during that annual evaluation process? And does the annual evaluation actually mean something, or is it a piece of paper in a file somewhere? Code of conduct. Does your agency have a code of conduct? Does your internal affairs process support your code of conduct? And do you live by that code of conduct? Of course, following that is, do you have internal affairs, and do you conduct internal affairs investigations? Patrol functions, they look closely at patrol functions and how we provide services for our uniformed patrol officers. Investigations, our detectives, how do we handle cases? How do we handle evidence? How do we handle victims? On to property and evidence, which I will tell you is also probably in the top two with records, highly scrutinized area, an area that many agencies can really struggle with from time to time. And then finally, prisoner security. If you have a jail, they look at how your patrol function interacts with your jail. And it's important to note that accreditation for us right now does not involve the jail. It only involves our operations that actually interact with the jail. The jail accreditation process is a completely separate process. So file maintenance phase. During the file maintenance phase and self-assessment phase, we have to gather proofs of our ability to meet the standards, the 145 standards that are set forth. And then we have to show further proof we are actually living by what we say. It's not just a policy and a policy manual, but the actions of our team members live up to what our policy says. So as we go through that file, it's essentially creating a file that shows what is our policy that meets the standard, and then what have we done, actions, case arrest, formal memos, training records, things like that, that show that that policy, that standard is institutionalized in our department, that we're living by what we say. The on-site assessment and evaluation phase. This is a challenging time during the accreditation process. The on-site assessment and evaluation brings a group of volunteer assessors from across our state who are law enforcement professionals who are very familiar with the accreditation process and whose agencies have also been through the accreditation process and are accredited agencies as well. They evaluate us. Do we meet the 145 standards that WASPIC has laid out? Do our proofs, if you will, that we've submitted to show that, yes, we do believe we meet those standards, do they suffice and pass the test, if you will? WASPIC then has an on-site person who visits us and does an actual inspection, if you will, for lack of better term, of the police department physically in our records areas, our property and evidence areas. And then they also do spot interviews with our staff to see if our staff do in fact know critical policies and procedures, and are those policies and procedures followed in a regular day basis as we conduct our business and service to the community. The results of the on-site and suggestions for improvement are compiled into a final report, which we have received at PPD. Any non-compliance issues, you have 30 days to correct those. And if you cannot correct those non-compliance issues, you're done. You don't advance any further in the accreditation process. If there are no non-compliance issues, the person who does your on-site inspection provides that report back to WASPIC, and their professional services director will then make that recommendation to the Accreditation Commission. So the Accreditation Commission, the review phase occurs at the recommendation of the WASPIC professional services director. That's done at a formal commission meeting, at a formal conference of WASPIC, where the chief law enforcement agency, in our case me, and the accreditation manager stand before the commission and listen as the on-site assessor and professional services person provide their report to the commission on, did Puyallup PD meet the standards? What did they find? What do they think? And how did it go? If that we are recommended for accreditation, the Accreditation Commission must take the first vote to approve us for accreditation. If they vote to approve us for accreditation, the WASPIC board, which is comprised of a number of police chiefs and sheriffs from around the state, as well as the FBI director here in our state, the Washington State Patrol director, and one prosecutor that I've forgotten, they take a vote to affirm the Accreditation Commission's decision. If at that point we're successful with both of those votes, then we are awarded a plaque, if you will, and accreditation status, and we are on our way to reaccreditation in 4 years. In the executive board phase, again, the WASPIC reviews the findings, and we've covered that. That will be occurring at the awards phase. So PPD nailed it. That's the easiest way to say it. Our on-site accreditation occurred on the 29th of August. We are in 100% compliance with all 145 standards as set forth by WASPIC, and we will be referred to the WASPIC Accreditation Commission's annual meeting in November in the Tri-Cities. As noted on the earlier slide, they can make recommendations for consideration. And our agency did have 6 recommendations of consideration, and we were quite ecstatic about that because that's truly a very good thing that there were so few recommendations for considerations. I will share with you that the on-site assessor who has been in this business for 30 years was very impressed with the Puyallup Police Department. And I think that reflects on the team and the people that we have that work very hard for this community each day. So what are the 6 items of consideration that we will be looking at in due time? First of all, there was a suggestion that we look at how officers book property into the property room. And I'll be candid with you, we still use paper and pencil when officers do that. And it sounds like we might be one of the few agencies still using paper and pencil to book property and evidence. So they suggested a lean process on the actual steps that an officer goes through to book property into our property room. Number two and number three, frankly, are physical issues with our building. So we'll work through those, but they suggested that we need to have in place some alerting systems in our property room. If there was a extreme temperature variance in our property room that could damage perishable evidence, and we do not have someone in our property room 24 hours a day, hence the recommendation to have an alerting system. Number three was our ventilation system. This is frankly not new news to us. They are definitely recommending that the city take a hard look at the ventilation system, as they frankly thought it needed a complete overhaul. That is related to items that we have that cause an odor to come into the property and evidence room, and on many occasions into the complete building. And most of the time that's around drugs. So that's an area for us to look at and figure out how to improve that. Number four was a technological recommendation for us. And we're already working on this one. We've applied for a grant, and we're hoping that we will be successful in receiving the grant, as this piece of equipment isn't exactly cheap. So we're hoping that we will receive the grant for that. Number five, this relates to a budgetary request, which you all approved, and we are very grateful for that. But as you remember, we do have a number of items in our property room that can be removed from our property room once we have staff that's able to do that. So we acknowledge number five, and we had great discussion with the assessor on this one, that this is something that has accumulated over the years, and we have a plan of attack and an action plan of how to get on top of that as we've added that second property and evidence custodian this past budgetary process. And she is actually currently in training still with us. So we are excited to have her and see her full impact in our property and evidence room. And number six was a review of current family notification processes when firearms are returned to respondents in a family violence order. And there is some thought out in the domestic violence world that families may want to be notified if somebody was involved in a domestic violence case or protection order violation and they were getting firearms back legally through the court process, that we as law enforcement should provide some notification to that. So we're going to look at that and talk with our DV advocate in the city attorney's office and get their thoughts on that too, if that's our role or how that should work. So we appreciate all six of these. And that was it for Puyallup PD. No non-compliance issues and 6 items to think about. To give you some perspective, there are 281 law enforcement agencies in our state as of today. 69 are currently fully accredited. There are 3 that are expected to be added to that list in November, and we are one of those 3. And I have to tell you, I couldn't be more proud of our people at the Puyallup Police Department who worked tirelessly this past year to get us to this spot. And those are our heroes, the true heroes of accreditation. And I want to take a minute just to recognize them, because we did have folks who truly went above and beyond the call of duty. This was not a pain-free process. I will tell you that. It was not a process that you could just fly through. And it did require us, and I'm glad it did require us to make some changes in some areas, adjust some of our practices. And frankly, we had some physical environment building things we had to do to be able to meet the accreditation standard, which was also good. So recognizing Nicole McNiven, who was our accreditation manager, her job was truly to make sure that when the evaluator arrived, the entire file of 145 standards was ready to go for the multitude of people to review, both on site, which is 1 person. And I think there were 5 to 7 people who also do a virtual review of the file just in and of itself. Her leadership as the accreditation manager was outstanding. Our records supervisor, Tracy Bick, records is a massive part, as noted in the accreditation process. And as you know, we brought body worn cameras on just right after we said we were going to do this. And, you know, in retrospect, maybe that wasn't the greatest idea in terms of workload, but our records team plowed through that and made that happen. And again, I would highlight for you all the commitment to add those records folks to help us deal with body worn camera and public disclosure. We could not have succeeded on the records front. We would not have succeeded on the records front without that help. Ashley Fralin, who's our administrative secretary and training coordinator, again, training is heavily scrutinized in the accreditation process. What are you training? When are you training it? How are you training it? Are the people training it qualified and up to date on what they're providing? Are you documenting it? And then are you coming back to it as you should be? And then finally, and what may be the most important, does your training match your policy, and does your policy match your training? And that is a lot of jigsaw puzzle pieces that you have to put together. And Ashley did a fantastic job of that. Again, our property and evidence room was heavily scrutinized. Sherry Therkoff, who's been with the city for 30 years almost, did a phenomenal job of readying the property room to make sure that all of our I's were dotted and our T's were crossed. I will tell you that was the area the on-site assessor spent the good majority of his time was in our property and evidence room. We have 17,000 plus items in the property and evidence room. And I was extremely proud of Sherry and the team back there who flew through that with flying colors, minus two things that are kind of out of their control with the actual building that we have. Sergeant Wayne Blackard, who's our administrative and training sergeant, again, on that focus on training, making sure that the officers and staff and corrections officers have the proper training that they need, and that all of our I's and T's are dotted. Our training cadre, again, because of the heavy focus and scrutiny of training and who's doing training, all of our training people really were on their A game to make sure that all of our lesson plans, if you will, we have to provide testing during our training, that all of that was dialed in for our department, and that we have good accountability in our training program. The record staff, again, as Tracy was very focused on accreditation, business still goes on in the city of Puyallup. We still have 911 calls to answer, police reports to distribute, and our records team kept that going as we had kind of pulled away the supervisor to work on accreditation. Lastly, our command staff members, all of them were very committed to this process, and all of them had responsibilities with their own divisions to make sure that nobody wanted to be that person that was not ready for accreditation because they would have been voted off the island, but they are a great team and truly, truly committed to this process. I wanted to recognize human resources and IT. Part of the accreditation process was to look at our hiring practices, our background investigation practices, our interview practices, and how we handle those reports once the background is done. Katie's team in HR did a fantastic job, and they deserve recognition for that, as did Amit and the team at IT. We cannot do it without them. We depend on them to make sure that the systems in place are compliant with numerous things around confidential information, and our IT team hit it out of the ballpark as always. And then finally, to recognize City Manager Kirkley and you all for your support of the police department over the last several years to get us to a place where, frankly, I felt comfortable going forward that we would succeed in achieving the 145 standards as set forth by WASPIC. We did not do that alone, and I thank both Steve and council for your support, your encouragement, and your wisdom through the last several years to get us to that place. And with that, I'll take your questions.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and go on to Councilmember Ferris. She had her hand up earlier, so I'll go ahead and acknowledge her.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
Chief, I completely understand getting special qualifications because I know it's probably very similar to the military, and to really ace this process is absolutely stunning, and yet not unsurprising. It is unsurprising. I think I put too many negatives in there. So first of all, I just want to say congratulations to you and your team. And I wondered if some of those people behind you were part of this process. Is that true?
The people behind me are part of the next presentation from Kirsten's office, awesome team with emergency management. But I'm sure our folks who are at home enjoying a night off the fair appreciate your comments very much.
Okay, so you have nobody to introduce back there, so I'll wait for the next presentation. But I just want to say bravo, Zulu, which is Navy talk, for just outstanding job. Thank you.
Councilmember Ferris.
Thank you. Councilmember Dorr, please.
Thank you. Chief, I offer my congratulations. I am not surprised in the least. And you neglected, which of course you would have, to put yourself on that list. So I want to thank you for your leadership and taking on this task, because it's a monumental thing that you are going to have to be in charge of and direct. So I appreciate your dedication to that, and to PPD. I mean, I could not be prouder of them, never have I wavered in that? And this just continues to make me proud. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Castema.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
I too would like to add to that. And really on behalf of the people of Puyallup, I think they realize how fortunate they are to have our police force, our police department. And we did a survey recently and it was well in excess of 80% of the people in Puyallup actively support our police department, which is actually very, very high. Given all the tenor out there in our society, it's actually very high. They already appreciate it, but to tell you the truth, they should appreciate it even more. Let me explain. To go for something that is optional, that like accreditation or certification, you don't have to do that. And to add to that, to bring in on-site assessment evaluators. These are outsiders. Who likes to do that? Who wants to go ahead and have someone come in and pick through all of those 140 some factors and then tell you where, based on their professional experience, where you stand? Not many people have the courage to do that. But a consequence of that is that those items are never disclosed to the public. And oftentimes government entities don't want to because the criticism sometimes can be overwhelming. And unless you have a very supportive group of leaders, and which you do, I'm very proud to say the 7 people here and those that came before are very proud. And we realize the integrity that you operate at. So I think that it's often easier time just to bury that information. So for you to come forward and have this evaluation, this extra, and then bring outsiders in to evaluate you is extremely commendable. And I'd like to kind of convey to the residents of Puyallup that it takes courage to do that. It takes leadership. And again, it has manifested itself already in how they feel about our police department. But I'm above 80% myself. Question I have for you is, how do you think this process that you've gone through, the city of Puyallup has undergone extensive strategic planning. And I think we all know we had a recent consultant say it's probably one of the best strategic plans that person has ever seen for a city. Okay. And then that has a lot to do with the leadership in the city, our city manager, Steve Kirkley, and then everyone's willingness to back such a fabulous policy. But let me ask you, how do you think this accreditation process dovetails into that strategic planning that I know you're a part of, as with every city department? Thank you.
Councilmember Castema, it allows us to stay focused on the things that matter to our community, the things that matter to our residents, the goals and objectives that you all have identified as our community leaders, to make sure that our spoke in the overall team Puyallup wheel is going in the right direction with all the other departments to meet the goals and objectives that you and our community has laid out for us, that we have a vision for Puyallup, that we have something that we want to see that makes Puyallup even better than what it already is. And so for our perspective, accreditation allowed us to make sure that we were honed in on what our mission, vision, and values are, what our operational procedures should be, that are what we say is what we do, and what we do is what our policy says. And so from my perspective, it was a very valid process. It was something that I was a believer in before, but I'll be frank and say I'm even more of a believer in now. It was not without some blood, sweat, and tears along the way. There were some challenges for us, but we overcame those challenges. And I think that reveals true heart in our staff and our employees who know that this is an important process. It's important to our community. It fits with our strategic plan as a city as we identify where we're going and how we want to serve our community and what level of service we want to provide our citizens. I think they go hand in hand.
Good. Excellent response. Thank you again.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilmember Castema. Councilmember Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
So I just want to say congratulations, Chief, and to everyone in the department, every individual. I think, I want to echo what my council members have said before, but, we're very proud of the department and what you do for our community. And to go through the process and have the courage to go through the process, as Councilmember Castman said, and to open yourself up competently, is great. It's fantastic. And so it's got to be really rewarding to get through the process. I can see that. And it makes all of us proud. And to get through it in a way that's really stellar. I mean, as you said in the top of your slide, police department nailed it. And you did. And so that's fantastic. So I think we're all smiling up here today. So really congratulations. And we just really appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Palmer.
Thank you. Councilmember King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
I echo a lot of what my colleagues here to say this evening. And, I just can't thank you and the department and all of your staff that has shown true leadership under you, and all of your officers as well that continue to show great leadership out on the streets, as to our constituents and those in our city. I think it's great that we went through this process. I say we as a city, you, to show great transparency of our department. And I applaud you and your efforts and leadership, and the like Councilmember Palmer said, at the top of your slide, you said you nailed it, and you guys did. And so to have only 6 issues at hand, that's tremendous. So congratulations.
Thank you, Councilmember King.
Deputy Mayor.
I second everything that's been said this evening by council in this regard. But I'd just like to add that taking this challenge on with the building and the shape it is currently is I'm sure it made the accreditation process more difficult than it might otherwise have been. And I applaud you for doing this and accomplishing this under those somewhat adverse circumstances. And I just am personally committed to making sure that you don't have to face those unfortunate circumstances in the future. And we have a bond measure out there, and I hope that the citizenry of the city of Puyallup will come out in mass and express their appreciation for the police department by approving that bond measure to give you better quarters. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm going to give a different perspective that's been given tonight. In addition to the things that were stated, I want to maybe reflect something that hasn't been stated, but I think pretty clearly implied. As a father and as a husband, I work hard for my family and children because of my love for them, and I care for them. And I think part of the credit beyond your leadership, which is wonderful, and the staff, which is wonderful, I think that you really care about this community, and your employees care about this community. And so their energy of wanting to produce that for the constituents they serve, their customers, is certainly evident. I think also the city of Puyallup constituents have empowered you. And I empowered you in this regard. I've heard of some of your officers that worked for other cities who used to get waved at a lot. And they used to, people in that city would wave them with their middle finger. And that's how they would greet them. When a police officer went by, they'd wave them with their middle finger. And here in Puyallup, we wave with all 5 fingers. And other cities, they would say hello to them with, blankety blank blank. Here it's a good morning, officer. So I think our city has really empowered the police force to be great public servants, because the public's been good to you and to your officers. So kudos to the city of Puyallup, for the constituents who have set the culture for you to respond to in return, say, I want to give excellent service because they're being excellent and really treating us with tremendous respect. So really grateful for our city and the support that they have for our law enforcement, because it's a continuing momentum that continues to build upon each other. And I do think that the opportunity for Puyallup to perhaps with this accreditation and the continued culture of high respect for our customers and the constituents high respect for the police officer. Perhaps down the road, Puyallup could be a model where many cities might learn from how a good working relationship with their law enforcement and local police is conducive not only to good relations and better outcomes, but in terms of public safety and better service to protect our businesses and our households and our families and our children and our public. So thank you from that perspective. I hope that was helpful as well.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, Council, for the comments on that. Now we're going to hear from Kirsten Hoffman. She's going to talk a little bit about the Community Emergency Response Team recognition. And I understand she's got some support and help here to give a presentation that she's going to get probably done in the next hour and a half.
Thank you very much, Mayor Johnson, council members. Kirsten Hoffman, your emergency management manager, and I promise you it won't take an hour and a half.
I know you're fine.
It's our distinct pleasure to introduce you tonight to Puyallup CERT. CERT stands for Community Emergency Response Team. And here in Puyallup, we are part of a federal program and federal system that empowers our residents and pupils in our community to be prepared. And we're very excited during National Preparedness Month to introduce you to CERT. We've got some folks here that we want to recognize tonight for joining Puyallup CERT. And I'm going to introduce Louise Darcy, Emergency Management Program Technician. As a CERT sponsoring agency, we have to have a staff member who's a program manager so that we can deliver the curriculum and support a team in accordance with the state and with the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And Louise has taken incredible leadership to bring CERT to Puyallup and to launch the team and really support these folks who are critical partners of ours in our emergency preparedness and response. So Louise, you want to come up, please?
Hello. Thank you for this opportunity to talk to you about CERT. So what is CERT? CERT stands for our Community Emergency Response Team. It's designed to educate participants in disaster response skills for hazards where they live or work. So just to give you a brief history about CERT, in 1985, Mexico City experienced an earthquake. More than 10,000 people died. They did have untrained volunteers come help with the efforts. They saved over 700 lives. Unfortunately, 100 volunteers that weren't trained in disaster skills died in the process. So because of that, the LA Fire Department in 1985 noticed that, and they created a curriculum. The program was picked up by FEMA in 1993, and the program is recognized in all 50 states, and there's over 3,000 CERT programs in the nation. So we offered our first basic training in March 2023. We have over 20 volunteers that completed basic. Some of the topics included disaster preparedness, fire safety and utility controls, light search and rescue, terrorism in relation to CERT, disaster psychology, and disaster medical operations. The program was free, so we had instructors that provided their dedicated time to teach the students. Our program is limited to participants that are 16 and older, and it's a very popular program. I have a wait list of over 40 people that want to join. Once they complete basic, they have the opportunity to join a team, and so we have our team members here tonight with us. When they graduate and throughout the class, they have different equipment that they use. They have a bag, a vest, a helmet, gloves, different items to protect them during their trainings and exercises. And why is CERT important? We know that vetted trained disaster volunteers are invaluable. We have some stats up there from the National Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster from 2019. They had over 9 million volunteers that year, and they provided over 48 million hours of service, which equated to over $1.3 billion in donated labor. And then similarly, during COVID, we had our volunteers throughout the city. So we had 78 volunteers that provided over 4,500 hours in labor. We have some pictures here from our CERT team. So we have down in the lower left corner during they had a drill that they had to participate in to to show the skills that they learned in class and how to use those skills. In the lower right corner, we have one of our Puyallup Public Works employees, Elise Russell. She was showing the class how to safely turn off their gas utilities. In the upper right corner, we have a picture of our CERT volunteers at the One Puyallup National Night Out event, providing outreach and information on how to sign up for emergency alerts, such as Puyallup Alerts. And then in the upper left corner, we had the opportunity to do a training with Central Pierce Fire and Rescue, where they collapsed a barn and the team members helped search for survivors. So that is some of the things we've been doing with our program. And if you have any questions, we're happy to answer.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
I was just interested in you say you've got a wait list of 40. How big is one of your classes?
We had it limited to 25 for the first offering. We're probably going to increase that for our next offering. We're going to partner with the city of Bonnie Lake in October. And so we'll probably have the max of 40 students allowed in that one.
And how frequently do you offer the class?
Well, it's a new program, so we're probably going to do twice a year, probably spring and fall.
And how long do the classes last?
It can vary. So the one that we did in March, it was over the course of 4 weeks. It was Tuesday and Thursday night from 6 to 9 o'clock at night. So it was a big commitment. The one in October, we're going to do an accelerated course. So it's a 3-day course. It's going to be a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it'll be a 9 to 5.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Councilmember Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
Thank you for presentation and thanks for the work on this. I'm very proud of our emergency management team, Kirsten and all. Dangers lurk everywhere, right? And tragically, we've seen that in Hawaii recently. But we live in a dangerous area, whether it's lahars, floods, train derailments, gas lines, fire, smoke, all those things. And so just the fact that you're building capacity within our community is really important because, it's probably, I hate to say it, but it's probably a matter of when we'll have flooding and stuff like that are less severe, but just being prepared is so important. So I think we have a really good program. So I'd like to see how you're building it into community with this program. So congratulations. Thank you.
Councilmember King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
Great job tonight. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for sharing all of this information. The question I had was the 78 volunteers that you have on here. Is that current volunteers or was that from 2019?
That was a national stat, so it's not representative of
For the Puyallup,
for the TEL.
for the city?
Oh, for the TEL, that was during COVID response. Yes. Mhm.
Do we have an idea of how many we have now?
Oh, good question. Kirsten. Well, we have 20 CERT. The volunteers during COVID were related to a lot of faith-based organizations around town.
Okay.
Mhm.
With you have 25 in queue right now and another 40 waiting. Is that, so we have a pretty good list coming.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Mhm.
And then just as a curiosity question, looking at this, the photos that you provided, I see some people wearing masks. Obviously it's dust, but why is the dummy wearing duct tape?
Mhm.
They don't call them dummies.
That mannequin,
The mannequin, sorry.
I believe that mannequin was supplied by Central Pierce Fire and Rescue,
No,
our
that makes
friends.
sense. No, I'm just teasing.
Mhm.
Just making sure it wasn't supplied by the police department. That's all. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Castema.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
Between this presentation and the prior one, I just say to myself, our cup runneth over. We're very fortunate in this community. In the past, I dealt extensively with emergency management, and I found it extremely frustrating because people in the current do not want to think about disasters in the future. They refuse to do that at times. And even when you had a disaster, it has shown everyone that you've got to do something. When it comes to the budget prioritization, people always will say, well, we don't have to do with that preparedness. We can put it in something immediate. And when something does happen, of course, it directly translates into loss of lives or loss of property or some, catastrophe that will harm a community. So I want to speak specifically to the volunteers. Thank you very much for what you do in volunteering. I don't know what kind of insight you have or what drives you, but I kind of thank God that it does drive you because again, it's kind of a rare commodity that people really, a disaster of some kind is going to happen. It will, it's inevitable. We all hope, of course, that it won't, but there's something, it's just kind of a inevitability just by looking back, something's going to happen. But again, motivating yourself to step forward and prepare, I just think takes some very unique insight, and to volunteer time is very precious. Again, I'm residents of Puyallup, you have a lot to be very fortunate for. So thank you, volunteers very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you.
Sure.
Louise, thank you so much. Great to see you. I don't know if we've met in person, but thank you for being here. I had a question, Kirsten, about the collaboration with Bonnie Lake. So is this something you're going to be doing through Epic, or how is the enrollment going to work, or the participants that are selected to be in the next class?
Great question. So we are supporting CERT through our East Pierce Interlocal Coalition for Emergency Management, which has been great because we can draw on instructors and partners from various agencies and disciplines. So for the one that we're offering in Bonnie Lake, we will give some priority access to the City of Bonnie Lake Emergency Management Team to recruit their residents to be a part of that. And then we'll also fill in with people who are from the wait list. We know there's folks from the wait list who won't be able to make that date work. And we also Louise partners quite frequently with other CERT programs in Pierce County. Tacoma Fire, West Pierce Fire and Rescue, and Gig Harbor Fire also offer CERT. And Louise meets monthly with those program managers to talk about how they're supporting their team. And just this summer conducted the first regional get together of those CERT teams and all the CERT team members. So we're really working collaboratively to support this, knowing that these are folks who will help us in emergency situations and be the help until help arrives.
Great, thank you. So I too want to thank all of you for volunteering your time. That is quite a commitment. And I want to echo Councilmember Castema. I appreciate it very much that you are willing to dedicate that amount of time to serving your community. And so thank you for that. And Kirsten, I want to tell in council, I serve on a lot of public safety committees and things of that nature. And I will tell you that our emergency management department is top notch. And everybody tells me that. And everybody wants to steal our employees. And I have told Kirsten she's got a ball and chain around her ankle. She is not leaving Puyallup, but I didn't ever hear about emergency management when I first came on council. And now I feel like I'm playing, defense to keep our people. So thank you for the great job that you do. You guys are excellent.
Thank you. I too will share a perspective, I think, that is, again, reflective on the constituents of our community. I know many larger municipalities who call out for volunteers, and you get less than what are even here tonight, in proportion. So in proportion to our volume size, but the response from our citizens is really outstanding. And so it's a real testament to the culture of Puyallup that we are a people who serve. And we take care of each other and we cover each other. And each of us has a unique role, a real testament to the culture and the people and residents of the city of Puyallup. To those who are volunteering tonight and those that will come, thank you for your service. I like Councilmember Castema, thank God for you and appreciate your respond to the call. And it's my hope and prayer that your model of service will stimulate others to be inspired to step up and have just a great, in a sense, army of volunteers in many sectors across our city to give back. And I will say that, and I'm sure many of you can testify to this, that many folks who do end up serving in some cause, in some capacity for their city and various causes. I think with hindsight, you look back and find out how rewarding it was for you, that you get a lot out of it too. So it's not just a one way, it's a two-way street, and everyone, I think, benefits from your service. So thank you so much for your service. God bless you. And thank you for your presentation. Okay. Oh, all right. All right, Council, we're moving on to item 6A. It's an ordinance, a first reading of an ordinance pertaining to the right-of-way for work involving excavations in the right-of-way. I understand that our city attorney, Joe Beck, who is back with us today, is going to give us a very riveting lecture and discussion and really appealing kind of presentation on this. So we're excited about that.
Well, it may not be riveting and it may not stand up to the last two presentations you've had, but hopefully it'll be short. So my dad, who was a pastor, always said, if you can't be interesting, be short. So this is a right-of-way. This is our right-of-way ordinance. It's titled right-of-way administration, and it primarily deals with how utilities and franchises interact with our right-of-way. As you know, we don't have the ability to tell them they can't be in our right-of-way. We can only put reasonable guidelines in place for that. And so what we've been trying to do over the last couple of years is put more of that into code instead of negotiating it contract franchise by franchise. Both to provide equality across the board and to provide something where somebody coming in for a franchise knows exactly what to expect because it's already in code. It also helps us with some of the more difficult entities out there to put things that we have the absolute right to control into code instead of needing to haggle with them over things that are within our police power as a city. So this is very much a housekeeping ordinance. And what we've done is add some provisions, and everything that's been added is simply things that we would normally put into a franchise agreement with, for instance, an entity like Comcast or PSE or that sort of thing. So that's where most of the impact will be. We added a couple of clarifications in the definitions, and then we added two definitions that we did not previously have regarding unopened right-of-way and who an applicant is. And then several sections that we rewrote slightly to add clarification regarding, for instance, coordination requirements between the franchises in the city, the utilities in the cities and each other, so that we don't have multiple cuts in our road and we can make sure that things happen all at the same time. We added a specification with regard to the relocation process. Often when we're doing projects, we want to widen the road, we have to relocate utilities, and that can hold up our projects. It can cost us extra money. And so we rewrote that section to have the ability to set a specific relocate date and then to provide a process to negotiate and grant more time if the utility, for instance, gave a good reason for why they couldn't get it done in that amount of time. But it allows us to be more flexible and at the same time implement a specific date that we know and we can rely on to have those utilities moved for projects and that sort of thing. And then finally, the last sections, the last page of sections, 1105, 260 to 340 are completely new. And they are quite simply a exercise in putting what would normally be in a franchise into code so that we don't have to negotiate those every time we go out and consider one of these franchises. So I think that's enough from me. I'm happy to answer questions. and get into anything in more depth, but I won't make you listen to me any longer if you don't want to.
Council, I'm happy to entertain questions. However, it's my thought that this is kind of getting into the minutia. If we trust our city attorney and he believes this is the right thing to do, I would like to entertain a motion that we pass first reading of the ordinances before 6A.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to before us to our first reading of an ordinance as listed in 6A and presented by our city attorney. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, council.
Council, before us, we have an item 6B. It's a second reading of an ordinance pertaining to the 2023 budget adjustments. We heard a pretty good presentation on this. The first reading, we had a lot of questions. And again, unless there's something significant or concerning, we'll move it back, entertain a motion to move for approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for item 6B. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Can I get a roll call, city clerk?
Yes, sir. Councilmember King. Aye. Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Whitting.
Aye.
Councilmember Dorr.
Aye.
Councilmember Ferris.
Aye.
Councilmember Castema.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, motion passes unanimous. Thank you. Council, before us, we have a second reading at item 6C of an ordinance pertaining to the municipal code pertaining to the disconnection of utility service due to non-payment. We've discussed this before in our first reading. Unless there's any further discussions, I would entertain a motion to approve second reading.
Move approval.
Second.
Council, we have a motion and a second to approve 6C is before us. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Can we get a roll call, please, city clerk?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Whitting.
Aye.
Councilmember Dorr.
Aye.
Councilmember Ferris.
Aye.
Councilmember Castema.
Aye.
Councilmember King.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, congratulations. Motion passes on second reading. Council, before us, we have item 6D, a second reading of an ordinance approving the inclusion of the building of 113 West Pioneer on the City of Puyallup Register of Historic Places. We did hear a presentation on that. Unless there's any further concerns or discussion, I would entertain a motion.
I just expressed and ask a couple of questions.
Sure.
That I'd like to get clarification.
Sure, please go ahead.
I think staff is ready to respond to those, correct? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nabila, assistant planner. I didn't hear what you said back there. I'm sorry.
I was just interested in the tax ramifications of the historic preservation.
Yeah, so I just added the special tax valuation pamphlet to the agenda item because I understand there were some questions about the special tax valuation at the last reading. So I can go over some of those questions if you'd like to. If not, none of the language changed.
Yes, I had not had a chance to look at that, so I would appreciate the help.
Okay, yes. So one of the questions from the last council meeting was whether or not tax benefits apply to the upgrades of the property or just the property itself. So if approved, the property taxes would not reflect the rehabilitation made to the property. So taxes for the 10 years after it was approved for special tax valuation would only apply to the existing property, not the rehabilitation.
So
I can give an example. So last time you had asked if the property valuation was 500,000 and the rehabilitation was 125,000, the tax break would, the special tax valuation would only apply to the 125,000. They would still be taxed on the 500,000 valuation of the home, if that helps a little bit more.
that helps. Yes,
Okay.
thank you. I think that's the gist of all the questions I had last week. I think that answers them all. So thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, council, we have I believe we have a motion. Do we have
I didn't give you a chance, so I will make the motion.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Okay, okay, so council, before us, we have a motion and a second to approve second reading as item 6D before us on our agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Motion passes. City Clerk, can we get a roll call on second reading, please?
Yes, sir. Deputy Mayor Whitting,
Aye.
Councilmember Dorr,
Aye.
Councilmember Ferris,
Aye.
Councilmember Castamo,
Aye.
Councilmember King,
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer,
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, motion passes. Congratulations, council. Council, we have one more second reading. This might be a record of second readings on one sitting. I don't know. We have a second reading on 6E, a second reading of an ordinance approving the inclusion of the building at 505 5th Street Northeast on the City of Puyallup Register of Historic Places. Again, we had some discussion, barring any further discussions or questions. I might entertain a motion to pass this.
Move approval.
Move. Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Without any further questions, I might call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. All right, motion passes. City Clerk, roll call once again.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Dorr,
Aye.
Councilmember Ferris,
Aye.
Councilmember Castamo,
Aye.
Councilmember King.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Whitting,
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, motion passes. Okay. Okay, next we have a resolution 7A, the appointment to the Planning Commission. The commission had, or excuse me, the committee had met to interview many candidates for this one position that was vacant. And I can't speak for everyone, but I think it's safe to say that we had some great candidates step up to the plate. And it was actually extremely difficult to choose. And we kind of really went round and round, but we had to pick one. And so it was the choice of the commission to appoint David DeGroat to the Planning Commission. And so the committee's recommendation is for that, but it's not official until the council determines if they agree with that. And so if there's any questions or concerns, I'm happy to entertain that. Otherwise, I might entertain a motion to approve David DeGroat to the Planning Commission as recommended by the committee.
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve David DeGroat to the Planning Commission. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimous. Congratulations. Thank you for your service. Looking forward to having you on the team. Thank you. Okay, council, we have some other business before us. Item 8A, we have a Van Leeuwen master plan update. And I understand that our Parks and Recreation Director, Cody, is going to present us an update on the master plan. And I believe before us, we have some handouts before us so we can kind of follow along with the slides. And I believe he's going to report on some surveys that were done and some feedback and consulting and whatever. So we'll look forward to hearing all about that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I'm here to present the Van Leeuwen Master Plan Survey done by our consultant, BCRA. And tonight we're going to give an update and hear some feedback from the council prior to the park design and give the next steps and a timeline for that. The survey purpose was to receive feedback from the community and the public and give us a direction on the remaster plan elements. We put that survey out on August 1st, and we did that through Facebook, through our own website, and with the city's communications officer, Eric. We had almost 1,100 total responses, so we had a great response rate from the community in that 3 weeks. And our first question was, are you a resident of Puyallup or the surrounding area? And 84% said that they were a resident of Puyallup. Most of our results came from the 35-year-old to 54-year-old demographic, with the 35 to 44 being about 30% of the result. We asked, do you have children in your household? And just under 60% said yes, followed by how many? And that was 1 to 4 was the leader in the clubhouse on that. And then the city's park system currently includes a number of sports fields. The revision of the Van Lerop Master Plan will include consideration of whether the proposed synthetic turf material field use should remain or be changed. Please tell us whether you think the city should leave the synthetic turf, find another active option, or find another passive use option. And the passive use was our leader there with just under 50%. Other examples of passive use recreation, they're hiking, walking, biking, using trails around the park as well. What amenities are most important to you or members of your household? Please rank the following amenities in order of preference. Again, passive use came to the top, followed by the playground and the synthetic multi-use turf field. Pickleball courts were close behind that as well. If a synthetic turf multi-use field were to be provided, which sports are most important to you or members of your household? And soccer won that, with baseball and softball coming in second. And then we just asked for one word phrase, how you would describe Van Lerop Park once it's fully developed. Some of those, the more bold type there is what was answered most. So family, beautiful, community, peaceful. Those were words that people used over and over. And so they kind of came out in this result here. So we asked an open-ended question and 650 of the survey respondents responded to the open-ended question, and it was just share your final thoughts. And the three kind of most common themes that were shared were open space. We had over 120 comments just saying we want to leave it as passive, open space, followed by a lot of pump track and pickleball comments as well. And there was dog park and splash pad spray park were also some of the common open-ended thoughts. So our next steps, we're going to get 3 updated park design options with kind of a active, mid-level, and then a more passive option. We have an open public meeting in the fall that we have yet to schedule. We'll present to the Parks and Recreation Board in November, and also back here to council in November as well, with final design completed in early 2024. And with that, any questions or feedback? I kept it under an hour.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. Great survey. I really especially liked the verbiage, just to hear kind of that word. What's that word that means to you? And to see those kind of prioritized and enlarged where the theme was. And what a wonderful thing to see that some of the top ones were really the culture of our people, which is community, family, family friendly. Yeah, just really like that. Seems like too that there was a real sense to preserve kind of this open space kind of vibe, which I tend to think makes some sense. We have some pretty good active parks that we've recently invested in, and they're quite successful. And certainly not a bad idea to have some places for some tranquil. Because some people go to have some high energy, rah, cheer, run, sweat. Some people kind of just want to go to a park and be tranquil, maybe think, meditate, talk, those kinds of things. So we have some spaces that are public that could provide that kind of opportunity. Certainly has some merit. So I certainly think we should be looking at that. I'll open up for discussion. Councilmember Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cody, and thanks for moving this forward. So this doesn't surprise me. That's kind of what I might have expected. People are getting to use this park and enjoying it for what it is. And we put in the corridor there, and people love that, and they love the peacefulness of it. And they, Puyallup has fallen in love with the looping as well. That was not intended, by the way. That just kind of happened because had to plant with something, and so it was planted with wildflowers. And that kind of happened. So I think the survey kind of speaks for itself. You know, as a bit of history here, when we put this together, we had really two competing plans, one called the Polder Plan, which is kind of what we ended up with, and the other was more of a sports complex plan. And I think people fell in love with the Polder Plan, no question about it. And I think as soon as it was presented to council at the time, is like, oh, wow, that is cool in terms of looking at the view corridor and all that. So that really carried the day. And then what we did is that we kind of added in, you know, some things on top of it. You know, we put in the sports field and put in extra parking to support that. And, you know, I think that was at the time kind of a little bit of a compromise, you know, in terms of really going with the Polder Plan, but trying to preserve, you know, have some of those amenities like the soccer field. But since then, we put all that investment out into the rec center with the fields out there. We, you know, have 2 new great fields out there. Plus, we're now seeking, or I think we received money to put turf out at Clark's Creek. So we really do not need it out there. So I think the survey pretty much, you know, confirms that, and we can now move forward with a more of a scaled back, you know, more peaceful, open space type concept, kind of consistent with the original Polder's design as it was. And so, you know, as we move forward, you should look at that plan, the amount of parking that we had in the upper left. Yeah, we don't need that. I mean, that paves over, geez, I don't know, 15% of the whole park. So obviously we don't need that because that was there to support the soccer field. So that can certainly may go away, maybe entirely, or be completely scaled back. Certainly would need to expand the parking on where it is now, that little teeny lot.
Right.
You know, to envision that coming across that whole front there. That makes a lot of sense because we'll need the parking there. But yeah, as we move forward on creating that, you know, taking advantage of what's there, a lot of maybe more, you know, interconnected little trail loops and stuff like that. That's part of this plan already. So that seems very consistent with the direction of the community. And, you know, I think some area of open grass makes sense. I mean, that's consistent. Bradley Lake is like that. Chambers Bay is like that, just that open, it still keeps maintain that openness, but some grass, you know, regular grass is probably makes sense just to provide opportunities for kind of that passive type recreation. And then protecting some of that lupin, you know, figuring out how that integrates in. So we have an architect, right?
Yes.
On board to kind of take those concepts. And obviously I don't think, you know, I love the lupin throughout the entire park, but that's a lot of it. And it's only there for what, 6 weeks of the year. So I think protecting some of it makes a lot of sense. So that's my feedback right now. I think first good steps. What's the driver on this is we got money for the playground, but we probably where it's intended to be, where it says on this map is probably not where we want it. You know, so we've got the money, so we had to do this update to figure out where we want to build the playground, because that's the first thing that's going to be built. And so figuring that out into kind of in terms of this refresh revision for the park makes a lot of sense. So that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Dore, please.
Thank you. I
Sure.
want to poke Councilmember Palmer down there because the Polder Plan was not one that you were excited about initially. So yes, you did. But there was, I just had to thank the city manager for that view or that presentation. I agree with I'm not surprised by the survey. That is what I hear from constituents and what I think that they're looking for. I agree that they have embraced the lupin, but I do think that it can't be the whole park.
Right.
So I'm fully supportive of some set aside or some areas where that can be. I do like the grass area. That's one of the things up at Bradley that people, they come up with their own use. It's picnic, it's, Frisbee, it's, playing catch, just some simple things, and that's what a park should be. It should be, they get to create what that use is. And I agree that the playground probably should be moved now down closer to where the existing parking is. I spoke with Councilmember Palmer about that earlier today, and it is true, the parents shouldn't be trekking miles to.
Or across the Lupin, yeah.
Yeah, or across the loop,
Yeah.
yes, that we're trying to preserve. So I think, in my opinion, it should go down there. I want to call to attention to great presentation. I'm not sure I'm liking the categories here. You might want to change the age range because mine keeps going down. And for this is beautiful. And I would like to show this to Public Works. This is the kind of thing I can see. So you get extra credit as our new parks director for taking into account to the age of the council and our vision. So thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ferris, did you have any comments? I didn't want to, but I'll go and turn it over to Councilmember Ferris for a minute.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have yet to figure out how to raise my hand when I'm on my mobile phone. So I appreciate you noticing my hands raised earlier. Welcome to Puyallup again, and you passed your first major presentation. You did a fantastic job. All I would like to do, I was waiting to see if Councilmember Castema brought it up, but I would like to put in a really strong recommendation for some pickleball courts away from, or at least some distance away from the Lupin if possible. It's a really popular sport, and we have a man whose first name I forget, who is our constituent. So I'm going to call him, no disrespect intended, the pickleball man. I think he has been here several times to give us presentations, which have been outstanding. So I would really like to become Washington State pickleball's capital, and that's the city of Puyallup. So I put in for my constituent, and I'll have Councilmember Castema say something that is inspiring to all of us. Okay, thank you.
Well, she set you up. Okay. Councilmember King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great presentation. Appreciate it. Welcome to the city.
Thank you.
I was just kind of chuckling a little bit through your presentation in a good way. With my weekly meeting with our city manager, we came across this presentation and that this was coming up. He said, "What are your thoughts?" And I said, I really think that I'm hearing out there that the people want more open space, less concrete. And lo and behold,
there it is.
There it is. And I had not seen this presentation during that conversation. And it's just something that I've been hearing a lot out there. And so I would have to agree, we have to figure out how much lupin we keep and what are we going to do in its place? I was a strong proponent of putting all sorts of activities out here, but I also think that our city also needs some place of tranquility and quiet and peace. And this corridor here is a beautiful example of just being able to sit there and look at the mountain and look at the open space. And, you could have a large area of grass to be able to go out there and do whatever that's needed within our community, move the playground down closer to the parking. Based off of my calculations, that parking down there is about 100 spots. I don't know if that's still true. Probably need to bump it to about 150 to 200, in my opinion. No scientific backing, just a numbers guy. But with that, I'd really like to try to see this turn into something that's tranquil, that will be able to attract something like the Tulip Festival that we have up north, but something that relates to Puyallup, perhaps daffodils, something along those lines. Yeah, I think it would be great to be able to bring that back. So when those daffodils come back, even though they are around for only a short period, it's on our seal. It's something that we don't get to experience that much anymore, other than really through the parade or going to an adjacent city to see those daffodils. But to be able to see that in our park, and to be able to have that in that corridor, I think would be nice. I think having that tranquil space in our city, and having a space that people can just go and relax and not do too much other than just have a nice walk and not have to deal with much out there. I think that's something to consider. I love sports. I love pickleball. I love soccer. I love football. I love all those things, but we have a lot of it already. This is something that's kind of special that we don't have anywhere else. And so I would highly suggest we reconsider some of those activity spaces out there to be able to relate to that. But strong proponent of everything else, but we do have a lot already. That's just something to consider. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
I just wanted to, as I think about this and the desire that I'm hearing for natural areas in our city, my thoughts turn to the LaBelle property, which we've recently got, and that seems like a great place for a really natural setting, and not grass, not frisbee fields, but just walking trails and that sort of thing. So I'm excited. I've always loved the Puyallup park system, and we seem to be able to keep adding to it to bring our citizenry more and different options, and I'm looking forward to seeing not only this come to fruition, but also that LaBelle property out there in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Castema.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
Robin obligated me to speak. I'll speak. I will only add this as a little bit of evidence to what she said. Is I was visiting one of my daughters in Seattle. She lives very near Green Lake. And I have to tell you, I saw people playing pickleball, excuse me. And, it's true. You can fit 4 pickleball courts into 1 tennis court. It's absolutely amazing, the level of intensity. And, I don't think there was any spare space left on these tennis courts that have been converted to pickleball courts. So I only would say this: for the intensity of use that you're going to get out of a pickleball court, it's probably a very, efficient use of square footage. And not to detract it all away from the more natural beauty that we're discussing here, I would just say that if you are going to have a section that is dedicated to more of a team sport or more of a racket sport of some kind, probably pickleball is not a bad investment based on just the intensity of usage. And what I experienced, I was having a picnic there with my daughter, and I was observing this tennis court. And when people were done, other people were on that court. They were like pushing each other off. So I think that there is a very high level of usage. And I say that partly because Edward, by the way, his name is Edward, now pickleball man, he would say that if he was here today. So thank you. But I do appreciate all your other comments, and you're just absolute careful consideration of what goes into this park. I know that Councilmember Dorr, Councilmember Palmer have really, this is kind of a labor of love for them. So I appreciate what you've said. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll conclude with some final comments. I think the public kind of indicated direction, and I heard the majority of council seem to affirm that, with the exception of a couple that kind of still wanted to move into the pickleball. I would hold off on the pickleball in this particular area and yet still promote pickleball in other areas of our other parks. So let's just divert the attention to increase more pickleball, maybe not here, maybe not right now, but let's take that same energy and find other ways in other parks to get that pickleball up. Let's preserve this one, I think, for now with some open space. I would like to, so I would, as I'm looking through this preferred plan, I would pull out 5 optional spray park. I would pull out, 13 artificial turf picnic area. I would even pull out picnic area. The last thing I want to do is see a bunch of, barbecues and picnics and, with parties picking up. And it didn't seem like a tranquil setting. That would be my thoughts. I would, of course, remove the tennis courts, basketball courts, skate park. I would even, but I do love the farm themed play area because again, that was a farm ground. So to have some themed play area that's farm themed would be fantastic to kind of go with the cultural heritage of that area. And if you haven't had a chance, have you been up to the Edgewood, city of Edgewood in their park?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's great. Great park, great playground, great theme.
Ooh, great thing. So we can mirror something up there. I've never seen it, but my wife's been there with our granddaughter, and it's super creative with little farm implements and rides and things like that. So it'd be very fun. So yeah, I think we have some clear direction. I think I hope that gives you some information to kind of take from there. And I think Councilmember Ferris has on a second round here. I'll refer to her.
I'm sorry. I since it seems like the majority of the council is not looking at doing any more sports field. I wonder if the Parks and Rec manager or director can look at the tennis courts that are over at the rec center. So I walk over there a couple of times a week, and I think I've only been over there one day in the last year that anybody was still, sorry about my dogs, was still that had been playing tennis, and they were just lobbying it back and forth, like as if I was to go over there and play tennis badly. So I was wondering if he could look at the usage over there and potentially converting those 2 tennis courts to pickleball courts, because I think that there would be a lot more use over there. Parking is usually wide open at the rec center. So I was wondering if any other council members had any problems with them doing kind of a usage analysis to see if converting those to pickleball might be the best bet in lieu of having any more courts over at the at Van Larips. And that's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Palmer.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Just a couple of things I had forgotten to say. One is when we do this plan, it'd be good to kind of, obviously the master plan in terms of the end goal, but the infrastructure costs out here are significant. And so, because it's just far away and we have to pay, fees to even get it, as we've gone through these ordinances over the last year. And so, and then to bring it out there. So it'd be good to kind of see what we can do, in phases, recognizing especially that infrastructure cost. Because when you put in a grass field, you're going to have to bring water, right? And so you got to and if you want to put in a restroom, you got to have water and sewer, blah, blah, blah. And so thinking about that and thinking about phasing that, I think is a good thing to think through when we put this plan together, because it'd be nice to be able to do a few more things relatively soon. Maybe it's just some more wandering trails and stuff like that, that are modest cost. And I think, got the playground, we got money for that. Parking lot will need to expand. So those are kind of 2 obvious things up front, and maybe some trails. So kind of thinking about it in time, because that infrastructure is tough. I mean, to put in a simple restroom here, like, I'm not going to point to the one down there. I'll point to somewhere else. Put in a restroom. I can't imagine what the infrastructure is. Probably more than the restroom.
I imagine.
Yeah. So that's kind of complicated. And so thinking through that in this process is a good thing. The The other, and then Councilmember King mentioned the daffodils, and originally that corridor, was intended to be full of daffodils, and there's a few. And I do think we need to amp up the planning of those daffodils. And if we're gonna have a daffodil corridor, we need to have a daffodil corridor,
Agreed.
not like 6 of them, right?
Yeah.
So, and I know, I have to look into cost of that, but having some density to really create something that we intended to do there would be really cool. To keep on with that vision. And then the last thing I'll say is we should consider a rock climbing tower, because that'd be cool out here. They got one up in, and I'll pass it. I talked to Sarah about it, but they have a really cool one up in Renton or Auburn, one of those two. So there's a few around. They're not that expensive either. So it's a possibility.
It's an intriguing idea. I know years ago, a sprinkler field, didn't they have a?
They do. They have kind of a
big,
interesting globule rock.
Right, but it's pretty old. But
Yes,
I'm
it
sure
is.
nowadays, I'm sure they're very, much more designed and modern. But that was
Yes,
in its infancy. That was pretty and still pretty popular.
it is. It is. It's true.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
So there's nothing like that down south. So
Yeah, it's not a bad
I think
idea.
it fits in with the scene.
Yeah, because it's not loud or active. It's just people climbing and hopefully not falling. So that's
Yeah,
good.
exactly.
Good.
All right, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Council. Actually, Councilmember Dore, please. Yeah.
Thank you. I want to echo on the daffodils. There needs to be more daffodils. They're great, but I had envisioned when this was planned that there was going to be a significant more amount. And as far as pickleball tennis courts, the one thing I would do want to remind council, and I don't know who was here, the Puyallup Parks Associate, or not Park, what is it? Councilmember Palmer, Parks Foundation, thank you, city manager, came about because they were advocating for tennis courts and covered tennis courts. So I'm not opposed at all to pickleball, but I don't know that we want to add one use at the expense of another that we had heard about through the community. So perhaps that's a topic for the Parks Board to explore. Are there, at some of the other parks, or is there a better place for an active thing like that? And I believe the gentleman, Edward Pickleball Man. I love that. Thank you, Councilmember Ferris. He was talking about significant, I mean, it seemed like he was talking about 32. That's the number that's sticking in my head. Please don't quote me on that. That's a lot of courts. And I don't know how 4 is going to, would actually be that beneficial. But anyway, so I think we should look into it, but I would like the Parks Board to perhaps look into that, where it is most appropriate, and bring it back.
Yeah, at the recreation center, we do have 2 tennis courts that are used pretty frequently for tennis lessons. We have a pretty strong tennis program in the evenings. We do plan to paint 3 pickleball courts on the adjacent basketball courts. That would be more dedicated pickleball courts. So we do plan to add those 3. So we do plan to paint those lines here in the fall or early spring. So by next summer, we have another opportunity, and that would add, there is pickleball lines drawn on the tennis courts. So that would give us 5 pickleball courts at the rec center.
Okay.
And so hoping to take some of that pressure off the pickleball elsewhere.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Ferris. Oh, you did. Are you done? Okay. I thought I saw a hand up. I just want to make sure. Okay. Councilor Palmer, I think, are you still up or? Okay, good. Well, thank you, Cody, for your presentation. I think you got some good feedback, I think. So.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so at this time, Council, we're going to move on to city manager's reports and then council reports. City manager.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. A few events coming up that I want to bring your attention and the community's attention to. The College Appreciation Week is back. It's a tradition that was started a few years back by this council and funded, and so it remains as part of our annual tradition. And I do want to give credit to our city clerk, Dan Bessels, who is working with Washington State University Extension Campus and Pierce College on the event coming up. And so Saturday, October 7th out at the Research and Extension Center on West Pioneer will be the tailgate event. So again, this is October 7th. It will start 2 hours before kickoff. Still don't know what time kickoff is. They're playing UCLA. So not sure if that will be an afternoon or an evening game, but it will be a great event. Last year's event was fantastic, and it'll be similar to last year's if you were out there. And then there will be a College Appreciation Week evening at Pierce College on October 4th from 4 to 7 p.m. And they'll give tours of the campus. There'll be an art exhibit, some music performances, nursing lab demonstrations, food trucks, and activities for children. So that's October 4th from 4 to 7 up at at Pierce College. And then one other event, and this is a new one this year, which is pretty neat. So both Washington State University and Pierce College are going to do a community cleanup event. It's going to be on Monday, October 2nd from 9 to 11 a.m. And so Pierce College is going to focus on Bradley Lake Park. And then Washington State University is going to focus on DeCourcy and Clarks Creek Park. So kind of in the respective areas in the city. So that's October 2nd from 9 to 11. All of this will be on our website and also on social media. And then at the meeting on the 26th, we'll have members from both universities here to present a proclamation, College Week proclamation. So some exciting things. The tradition continues with College Appreciation Week. Tomorrow night from 6 to 8 at Pierce College, there will be a community workshop on our comprehensive plan. This is open to the public. It's at the College Center building. They're multi-purpose rooms. It's going to be a fun, interactive event where staff and consultants will be there to talk about the comp plan, but also engage people who will be there. Some diagrams and games people will get to play, all part of our comprehensive plan. The theme of what will Puyallup look like in 2044. It's something that you all have already done some work and will continue to do a lot of work on. And so again, that's tomorrow night from 6 to 8 at Pierce College in the College Center room, College Center building. And then the last Puyallup 101, which is our community civics class. We've been doing this now for I think about 3 years. So the fall session begins on September 21st from 6 to 7:30. We already have 25 people signed up for this coming fall session, but there's still more openings. These are 8 classes that occur on Thursday nights from 6 to 7:30. And you get to learn everything, kind of a behind the scenes tour of the city, all our various departments. So if anyone is interested in signing up, you can go on our website, simply just put in Puyallup 101 and sign up for that. And lastly, next week's study session will be on the Environmental Sustainability and Action Plan. And there will be a presentation and discussion on that. And then also on the comprehensive plan and a progress report on that and a discussion on some of the changes that came from the legislature this last session that impact our comprehensive plan going forward. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. City Manager, is it possible in the future on some of these events to have them added to council calendars, like a calendar invite, just so we can have it available? And of course, we could opt to decline or maybe, but just be nice to kind of know that sometimes we forget about what's going on, and be nice to kind of have the option to add it to our calendars.
Sure, I'll make sure Pam handles that.
Thank you. Okay. Council, we're going to go into council reports unless council wanted to find a good reason to go into executive session and kind of debate and discuss for a couple hours over there. So we'll move on to council reports. Councilmember Castema, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know. I'll try to talk at least for a half hour to give us all the feeling of going over time. No, actually, I wasn't going to say anything other than the fact that he did bring up the WSU event that we're going to have October 7th. And that's part of the College University Appreciation Week that we have. I have to tell you, I was there last year and it was fantastic. If you can imagine, you go out to the WSU Research Extension Center at the end of Pioneer there, and it's open to the public. All residents of Puyallup are welcome because it's an opportunity for you to learn about that extension center. But they have a huge lawn there, and everybody has they're on picnic tables and they're on lawn chairs. I suggest you bring lawn chairs, and you bring a blanket of some kind, but there are food trucks. They're giving away, what was it, free ice cream. And there are all kinds of libations there you can purchase and have at the food truck, the food that you would desire. But it's really a great festive environment. And they have a huge, massive TV screen. The thing must be, 10 feet in diameter. I think it's a projection screen. And they have the football game going on. And I don't know, I think, most people, I guess, were noticing the football game, but it was more of the camaraderie that you got with the various people who were there. But there were probably a couple hundred people there. So I highly recommend, again, October, I don't know how we get that out there enough, but on October the 7th, I definitely will be there. I know Councilmember Palmer will definitely be there. And I remember seeing him there last year in a WSU alumni. So that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ferris, did you have some wisdom you want to share with us?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All I want to do is just, say to Jim, hey, next time you have a meeting with Pickleball Man and Diane, let them know I fully committed to those pickleball courts, fully. And as for my comments, I am happy to be part of the Team Puyallup, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Palmer, please.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad that we're rolling along with college appreciation. It's been a great event for, I think, 3 years, maybe in a row, 4. This will be a 4th. So really good for the community, all the different pieces of it. Glad to hear what they're doing in terms of the cleanup, et cetera. Get the flags out there. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be there because I will be in the Rose Bowl that day at the actual game. So I will miss the event at our campus. So, but I will still be rooting on the Cougs. So, and Huskies are also invited out, so I wanted to make that clear too. I think there's kind of two factions that go to these things. One is there's a lot of people in the community that are connected to the Wazoo Extension through all the programs that they do and all that stuff. And I think that's great. So there's a lot of people there for that. And then there's a lot of people there, to watch the game. And it's a nice blend. It's both, and that's kind of the character of WSU. It has all that. So anyway, so that's all good that we're doing that again, and let's just keep it rolling. The only thing I'll mention is I'm going to host, along with some other partners, the second Pierce County climate conversation next Friday. And that's just kind of a gathering of our fellow Pierce County jurisdictions or representatives. And we talk about, we'll have some presentations and talk about climate related issues and see what opportunities there are for collaboration, maybe around grants in particular. Maybe there's opportunities around EV charging stations or solar that makes sense to work in partnership with our other jurisdictions. That's it for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
I don't have much to say other than I'm a little disappointed that I wasn't invited to the light blue standard issued dress shirt this evening from 3 of our council members here on the dais and our city manager. So I'll be sure to pick one up at the Men's Warehouse next week.
All right, Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. Councilmember Ferris and I are good at this. We've got the same color on. It's mental telepathy. So I agree. I'm sort of shocked that you're not going to be at WSU, and I have attended in the past. It is a lot of fun. So I'm wondering if perhaps we can get Eric to start promoting those, because we're able to share them, and if we can get that out on our social media so that we can put it out there. And I have some friends that are diehard Cougs, and they said, well, we would have known. And one of them lives in Peshastin, but he would have gone. So, I mean, but you've got to give people a little bit of time for them to know that. On Citizens Academy, South Sound 911 is having their first Citizens Academy. It is going to be held on Tuesdays, October 3rd through November 7th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at South Sound 911. It's a 6-week course that will provide an in-depth look at the operations of the 911 center and promote a better understanding of public safety services. So I want to put that out there. You do have to register, and you can go to their website to do that, or their social media. The links are there. So with that, and also I want to say I love our Public Works Director, and that I pick on Public Works because they come out with these pages at budget time that no human possible can see because they're trying to be conservative. But all in good fun. So I appreciate you, Ken. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Well, I'd just like to note that Public Works has on a shirt too. Yeah, I don't have much to add this evening, so I'll just pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, I'd like to say a couple things. One is, you kind of we talked about, reflection. And just a few moments ago, as we were going through council comments, I wanted to honor and thank each of you for the opportunity to serve alongside of you and to conduct the people's business in a very respectful and civil manner. It's a real testament to the culture that we have collectively set together, which will set precedents, I trust, for the future councils to recognize we can have differences, but yet still serve the people's business. And certainly our state and federal elected officials, I think, can learn from this model. I'd like to also honor and thank our constituents and residents of Puyallup for the honor of representing them and serving them in a capacity that hopefully does them well, and our small businesses in Puyallup that work really hard to not only provide services for our residents and visitors, but also to provide for their families. And so I want to thank you for what you do. In terms of anything else beyond that, I think we're good. And I'd like to say thank you. God bless you and our city, and our meeting is adjourned.